All right, welcome to Think Like a Coder. Today we're going to do a popular sorting algorithm which is called the bubble sort algorithm. So as the name says, really it's a sorting algorithm where the numbers so I say the larger number kind of bubbles all the way to the top or to the end of the list or the array. So I'll explain what that means. So let's say we take this array and we start the bubble sort algorithm. So as we go through this list, we check is 5 greater than 6, or 5 is not greater than 6, is less than 6, so it's in the right position. And so we now check is 6 greater than 1, it is, so it's not supposed to be. And so we swap 6 and 1. So let's say we, on the first loop, we'll swap the 6 and the 1, and then 1 swaps to the 6. We now check is 6 greater than 2, yes it is, so we have to swap the 6 and the 2, so we'll put the 2 here, and then we'll put the 6 here. We now check is 6 greater than 4, yes it is, so we swap the 6 and the 4, now we look like this, 1, 6, then we check is 6 greater than 7 is not, so everything else is in the right place. That's what we do on the first iteration. So we come back to the next, and we say is 5 greater than 1, 5 is greater than 1, so let's say this is the first time we go through. The second time we go through, it'll look very different. What happens this time around? We check is 5 greater than 1. It is, so we exchange the 1 with the 5. We check is 5 greater than 2. Yes, it is. So the 2 and 5 will change spaces. We'll put the 5 here, and then we'll put the 2 here. Is 5 greater than 4? Yes, it is. So 4 goes here, and then the 5 goes here. And now you can see it's sorted. Yeah. So this is pretty much a very interesting example because, in this case, all the last numbers are sorted, so it's easier. Otherwise, we'll have had to sort and bubble. It kind of bubbles, the number bubbles all the way to the top, or the top of the list. So that's pretty much it. So that's how the algorithm looks like. So what does that look like in code? So let's do our bubble sort. Let's see, which I've defined before. Bubble sort takes an array, or it takes in the list. For now, let's just pass and say, what would that look like? So we start by defining a tracker variable. We call it is our array sorted. By default, the answer is it's false. The array is not sorted, right? So we're going through the list, and by we say while is sorted, or should I say while not is sorted, we say for I moving through the entire list, range length array. Now we don't have to go to the very end because, like we've shown in our first iteration, it bubbles all the way to the top. So we'll say length of array -1 for I in this range if array I is greater than the next element, which is array I +1. If this is the case, then we swap array I and array j. In Python, what we just say is array I and array j, or should I say I +1, excuse me. Array I and I +1 will be equal to, this is how you do this in in Python, in array I +1 and array I. That's how we'll swap. Once we do this, so sorry, something I forgot to mention. Well, not sorted. The first thing is we assume that the array is sorted. We have to set this to true. Excuse me. And then we now go through the list. And once this is done, once we go through the array, we actually swap it, then we know that it was not sorted. And so this will be equal to false, right? And then once we're done, we'll return our array. So first of all, I assume the array is false, it's not sorted. while not is array is sorted, which means it's true. So we sort this is sorted to true. We say for I in range, length of the array, moving through the entire array. If this is greater than this, then we swap. And once we swapped, we know that the array is not sorted. So we go back and start again while the array is not sorted. So it's to keep on doing this until it's finally sorted. So once it's sorted, once this is sorted, when we go through the array, this will break out of this while loop once it's sorted. Because once we come here and we have that the array is sorted, it won't bother going through here. So we set this to true, and then going through the iteration through the entire array. If I is greater than j, and returns false. Something else that we can do, if those in Python is easy to do this swap, but let's say another way to define is to define a swap function that takes in an array, that takes in two values, and then what we will now say is what this does is it says array I takes in this value, array I, closing this, array j. This is another way to do this. This should be array j, array I. So this is just another way that we could have done this. And then instead of doing this here, we will just define our swap, which we've already defined, and we'll say swap. And we're swapping I plus 1. But we're taking the array, we're taking I, and we're taking I plus 1. So this is another way that we could have done this. Let's see if this works. So we can start by, let's take this and bring this here. Let's test to see if this works. So we're taking unsorted, and then we're seeing if this would work. So we run this. As you can see, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. It sorts the array. So this looks good, which is our expected output. So this is just a way to do this, but because we don't necessarily have to define this function, because we already have this, it's just a simple one line of code. So we can leave this here. This is I. This will be I plus 1, and we're swapping it with I plus 1, and we're swapping this with I. And of course, this will be, instead of R, this will be array, this will be array, this will be array, this will be array. So we don't necessarily need to have this helper function. And if we run this, you can see it still does the exact same thing. One last thing that we can do to make this more optimal, as it goes through this list, as you can see, each time it goes to the end, the largest number on the first iteration will be here. On the second iteration, the largest number will come here. Third iteration, the largest number will be here, and on. And so because we know that, we don't have to necessarily go to the end every single time. So something that we can do is to define a counter, make this 0, and then while I is not equal to true, for I is minus 1, minus counter. And then once this comes and set it as false, then when we end the while loop, we can say, no, not at the while loop. Then we can implement the counter here. Is that the case? I think so. Yeah, I think so. Maybe. Anyways. Or we can leave that. It's not the same. So let's make this, let's change this, let's make this, let's say, I'll put 14 here, put 18 here, put 25, put 100, and let's see if this was to work. Let's clear this, let's run this. As you can see, it still works. So that is it, our bubble sort algorithm. Sweet. Until next time, as I always say, my wish for you is that you learn how to code, because coding is changing and will change the world. And those who get involved early in my personal opinion will greatly impact the future. And if that is you, let's change the world.
If you would like to create more awareness for your brand or content, or you would like to earn additional income, register now on www.Kleeky.com. The more you share, the more you earn. Kleeky.